Welcome back to Neurodivergent Relationships with Dr. Kathy Marshak, where we explore the often baffling dynamics between neurotypical and neurodiverse partners. Whether you're here to understand your relationship better, support a loved one on the autism spectrum, or simply find your voice in a neurodivergent world, you've come to the right place. I'm Dr. Kathy Marshak, psychologist, author, and your guide through the maze of mixed empathy communication. Today's episode is one I've carried in my heart for a long time. It's called My Brain is on Fire, and it explores what happens when the neurodiverse mind collapses under unbearable stress. We often talk about autistic meltdowns or shutdowns, but there's another darker experience that I call brain on fire, where the stress and sensory overload becomes so intense that the individual enters a prolonged state of dysfunction. It's frightening and it's rarely understood. And for me, this story begins in 1964 when I was only 14 years old. My mother's breakdown. All I knew then was that the minister had come to our house. My mother was overwhelmed after reading the book of Revelations in the Bible. She was terrified, convinced she'd seen how the world was going to end. That night, she was taken to the state mental hospital. They called it a nervous breakdown. I now believe it was a full neurological collapse, a brain on fire. My sister and I weren't allowed to visit. We waited in the cold lobby with its shiny checkered tile floors and plastic-covered furniture, while my father went in alone. That memory has never left me. A few days later, I was at school in an assembly, sitting high in the bleachers. Suddenly, I felt like I was going to fall. My eyes felt like they were spinning in my head. I asked my friend Sue if she could see my eyes rolling around. She couldn't, but she gently walked me down the steps. Later that day, I was called to the counseling office. A kind woman asked if anything was going on, and I said, no, but then I added, well, my mom was taken to the state mental hospital this weekend. I never saw that counselor again, but her compassion stuck with me. At home, I did my best to take care of my younger sister. I cooked, I took her to get a haircut, and even sewed us winter coats. It was all I could think to do, take some kind of action. When my mother returned, she told us I didn't need to go to the hospital. But I thought she did. At the time, I thought it had helped. Now I know better. The shock therapy and medications probably harmed her even more. And after that, she was never quite the same. Vacant, awake late into the night, reading, drinking Mogan David wine. She died at 49. I used to think cigarettes killed her, but I think life was just too overwhelming for a quiet farm girl from North Dakota who happened to be autistic. She didn't have the words to tell me what was going on in her brain, but I can speak for her now. What is brain on fire? Today I hear stories that echo hers. In our forums, parents talk about grown children collapsing under pressure, going silent, losing touch with reality. Some call it autistic burnout. Others say their brain collapsed. One woman's gifted son had a neurological event triggered by ADHD medication. He became catatonic, anxious, and unable to function. She called it a nightmare. It happens more often than people realize, and psychiatry doesn't have a name for it that captures the experience. They call it psychosis or catatonia, but it's not mental illness in the classic sense. It's a neurological implosion caused by long-term stress and sensory overload. Many neurodiverse people described it as feeling like their brain is literally on fire. And I believe them. It's not a metaphor, it's pain, it's heat. It's the body screaming that something is terribly wrong. Nature, nurture, and the blueprint. This collapse is a tragic part of what I call the blueprint, the nature and nurture of being neurodiverse. My mother had no tools to understand her brain, and no one around her knew how to help. She wasn't broken, she was overwhelmed, and so was I as her neurotypical daughter, trying to love someone who was slipping away. When I was 25, just before she died, I went to a therapist. I told him I felt lost. She said it was normal to grieve. But what I was grieving was not just her death. It was the relationship we never had. Now I know we never had it because we spoke different languages. We had different operating systems. And because her brain was too often on fire. A love that couldn't speak its name. To every NT parent trying to help their overwhelmed autistic child, I see you. To every neurodiverse adult wondering why your mind won't work anymore, I believe you. And to my mother, if you're listening, I love you still. I wish we had more time. I wish I could help you now. But most of all, I wish I had known how hard it was for you, how hot and painful your world felt. My mother didn't have the words, but I do. And I will keep speaking for her and for everyone living through this terrifying experience. What can be done? So what can we do when someone's brain is on fire? Give them space, quiet, gentle structure, a weighted blanket, a sensory-safe room, a therapist who understands, a family who doesn't push but protects. Prevention is key. We need systems in place before the collapse. Predictable routines, rest, nutrition. No shame for saying I can't. We need compassion that doesn't flinch. And we need to stop treating these events as purely psychiatric. They're neurological. They're human. They're painful. Thank you for listening. I'll be hosting a live after party to talk more about the brain on fire experience and what it means in the context of neurodivergent relationships. You'll find the link in the show notes or at drkathylearningcenter.thinkingfit.com or any of my websites or social media contacts. And here are some of the questions we'll be discussing at the after party. Have you or someone you love experienced what felt like a prolonged shutdown, collapse, or brain on fire? How do we tell the difference between autistic overwhelm and mental illness? What role does masking play in pushing neurodiverse people to the breaking point? How can neurotypicals learn to respond without panic or judgment? And what are the signs before the fire? How do we build prevention systems? So please join us, share your story. You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to be alone. This is Neurodivergent Relationships, and I'm Dr. Kathy Marshak. Hope you join me again.